Okay, let's start with today's lesson, coordination and response. Okay, the stimulus. Stimulus is a change in environment. Then we have receptor, which may refer to a cell or a sense organ that receive the stimulus. The effector may be a cell or organ that respond when a human body is stimulated. Okay, respond will be the action of the effector. So it looks something like this. We have the stimulus, and then the stimulus will be detected by the receptor. The receptor will then send information to the central nervous system. The central nervous system will then send information to the effector. The effector will then carry out response like this. So from the moment this stimulus is outside of the body, response is also outside of the body. Okay, the receptor and the effector is part of your body. So you have receptor, central nervous system, and then also the effector. Okay, so you follow this sequence lah. Okay. All living organisms are sensitive to their environment. This means that they can detect changes in their environment. A change in environment detected is called stimulus. Cells that detect stimulus are called receptor cells. In animals, the receptor cells are often part of the sense organ. For example, your eye is a sense organ. The rod and cone cells, or known as the photoreceptors, are your receptors. Okay, they are sensitive to light. So we have sense organ eye. Eye will detect light. The receptor cells will be rod and cones. Then we have ear. Ear is not in your syllabus, so we'll skip. Skin. Skin is the nerve. Skin will be sensitive to touch and temperature. The nerve ending in the skin will detect the changes. Nose is not in your syllabus. Tongue also not in your syllabus. So basically, eye and skin you will be learning. Eye basically will learn later. For you, you already learn eye. Okay, skin will learn in topic 10, homeostasis. Okay. Effector respond when body is stimulated. When the body detects the stimuli, the part of the body respond through the effector. We have muscles. Muscles is part of the effector. Okay. So thermoreceptors in the cell sense a high temperature when in contact with a hot cup. The muscles will allow the hand to pull away, will contract to allow the hand to pull away. Then we have glands. Okay, chemoreceptors sense delicious smell. Okay, the effector, the glands, salivary glands secrete saliva. Okay, so there are two types of effector, the muscles and the gland. The muscles and glands are effectors. To connect the effectors to receptor, a communication system is present between the receptor and effectors. Okay, communication system that are the easiest one or the normal communication system between the effector and between the receptor and effector is the nervous system. Okay, so we have the central nervous. We have receptor sending impulse through the sensory neuron, which will send impulse to the central nervous system, which send impulse to the motor neuron, which send to the effector and then the response. Okay, there's also another alternative where the receptor send nerve impulse to the sensory neuron, which send to the central nervous system, and the central nervous system will ask the gland to secrete a type of hormone, and the hormone will reach the effector, and the effector will give the response. Okay, so these are two types of communication now. Okay, the communication that involves the neuron will be faster. The communication that involves the hormone will be slower. So today we'll be looking at human nervous system. There are two parts. We'll be looking at just part 1 first. Okay, so here we have, we'll be looking at two components of human nervous system: central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, 3 organs, and then the structure of a neuron, types of neuron, and synapse. The human nervous system consists of 2 parts: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of brain and spinal cord, and then the peripheral nervous system is made up of cranial nerve and spinal nerve. Okay, the cranial nerve are nerve coming out from the brain, and the spinal nerve are the nerve coming out from the spinal cord. Okay, so remember we have central nervous system, the central one, like the headquarter, like that. Okay, you have brain and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is much more lower rank. So they are the nerve that comes out from the brain and the nerve that come out from the spinal cord. Okay, this is just for information. Okay, the human nervous system consists of three main organs. We have the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. The brain acts as a center of the nervous system. It receives impulses, process the impulses, and then decide what to do with it, and then it will send the instruction out through either the cranial nerve or the spinal nerve. It will send impulses to the cranial nerve, and it will also send impulses to the spinal cord before going to the spinal nerve. Okay, so yeah. Then we have the spinal cord. Spinal cord will coordinate spinal reflexes, and the spinal reflexes extend from the spinal cord to the organs. Then we have the nerve. Nerve are bundles of nerve fiber that allow transmission of nerve impulse. Okay, so we have one nerve fiber, and then we have myelin sheaths over here. This is basically one group of nerve fiber. We call it nerve lah. Okay. Nervous system is made up of special cells called neurons. Neurons transmit nerve impulse. The figure below shows a typical neuron. So this is a typical neuron. Okay, a typical neuron, you have to look at where the cell body is. So here, this is the cell body. If the nerve impulse were to enter the cell body from that particular branch, then that particular branch is called the dendron. Okay, if the nerve impulse exceed the cell body and enter that particular branch, that branch is called axon. Okay, so the term of the branch, it depends on how the nerve impulse move. Okay, so here you can see that the nerve impulse move in this direction and then move in this direction. So this part here will be called the dendrite. This part will be called the axon. You understand what I mean? So if this is the cell body, you have two branches like this. You don't know which is which. If I never tell you the direction of the nerve impulse, you cannot deduce on your own what is what, which is which. Okay? So if the nerve impulse were to move, if I were to give you the direction of nerve impulse, then yes, you can determine which is which. This one will be the dendron, this one will be the axon. Okay? Ken, do you understand? Okay, good. Okay, so this is the dendron, this is the axon, and then this is the axon. We have the myelin sheet over here, and then we have here we have the node of Ranvier, and then this is the nucleus of the cell that makes myelin sheet. Okay, so here you can see here there are actually many cells. Okay, this is one cell. Neuron is one cell. This one is another cell, 2 cell, 3 cell, 4 cell, 5 cells. So there are actually 5 cells in this diagram alone. Okay, the neuron is the only cell that is of the nervous system, and then this one, right? This one, the myelin sheaths, this cell are called the Schwann cell. So this is the nerve cell, this is the Schwann cell, Schwann cell, Schwann cell, Schwann cell. So the Schwann cell will wrap around the axon. Okay, when it wraps around the axon, its cytoplasm becomes the myelin sheath. Okay, the cytoplasm is made up of mainly fats. So that's why it's white in color. And then it will, because it's made out of fats mainly, so it will insulate against nerve impulse. So if you are not clear yet, so basically nerve impulse will come in this way. So nerve impulse will come in, and then you'll pass through the cell body, and then it will slowly pass through the cell like this, 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 before it reach the axon terminal. That is provided you don't have Schwann cell. If you have Schwann cell, the nerve impulse will move like this. Like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. When it comes here, the myelin sheath will prevent the nerve impulse from moving. So the nerve impulse will jump from one node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier. Due to the jumping, it will speed up the transmission of the nerve impulse. So you just imagine earlier without, if there's no myelin sheath, the nerve impulse will move like this. It will walk slowly. It's like crawling like that. It will crawl very slowly, and then enter here. If there's no myelin sheath, if there's myelin sheath, it will follow the red one. So the red pathway, it will jump, and this one will speed up the transmission of the nerve impulse. Okay. So if you look closely here, the node of Ranvier are small gaps in the myelin sheaths. Okay, it allows the axon to be exposed to the extracellular fluid and thus enhance the speed of flow of nerve impulse as nerve impulse jump from one node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Dendron will pick up messages. Okay, dendron will be over here. Then we have what? Cell body. Cell body is over here. Cell body will basically, it will receive all the information from the dendrites and dendron, and then it will process it before sending the nerve impulse to the axon. Then we have axon, a long thin fiber of cytoplasm stretches out of the cell body, is there to transmit the nerve impulse away from the cell body. Then we have the myelin sheath. Okay, myelin sheath is a layer of fat and protein which wrap around the nerve impulse. Okay, it insulates against the transmission of nerve impulse. Then we have Schwann cell. Schwann cells are the cells that wrap around the axon, and basically its cytoplasm is the myelin sheath. Neurilemma is the outermost nucleated cytoplasm layer of the Schwann cell. Okay. Then we have node of Ranvier. Node of Ranvier will be the exposed area, the exposed axon that is not wrapped around the Schwann cell. Then we have the motor end plate. This is the motor end plate over here. Okay. There are three types of neuron. We have the sensory neuron, relay neuron, and motor neuron. So here you can see this one is the sensory neuron. This one is the sensory neuron. Sensory neuron, basically the stimulus will come in like this. Okay, stimulus will come in, and then the receptor here, the receptor will generate nerve impulse. The nerve impulse will move along the dendron. Then it reach the cell body. Then it passes along the axon before going to the next cell. In this case, it will be going to the relay neuron. Relay neuron looks somewhat like motor neuron, but it is shorter and it doesn't have Schwann cell. Okay, relay neuron don't have Schwann cell, doesn't have myelin sheath. Okay, the motor neuron has Schwann cell and also the myelin sheath. Okay, and then if you look closely here, the sensory neuron is unique compared to the rest. Okay, the relay neuron and the motor neuron has its cell body near the starting end. Okay, this one is the motor neuron, relay neuron. Relay neuron is shorter, okay, but the cell body is also near to the starting end. The sensory neuron is slightly different. Sensory neuron started off with receptor. It doesn't start off with the cell body. It starts off with a receptor, and then the cell body is somewhere in the middle, and then it ends with here. Okay, these are the ends. Okay, so the sensory neuron structure is slightly different from relay neuron and motor neuron because the cell body is found in the middle. The motor neuron and also the relay neuron, the cell body is found on the extreme starting end. Okay, so you start off, normally you start off with the cell body. You start off with the dendrita, of course, over here, which is quite near to the cell body. And then you go to the cell body and then the axon. Okay, here you can see these two structures are quite similar, just that the motor neuron is longer and the motor neuron has Schwann cell. Okay. Okay, synapse. Synapse is a junction that connects two neurons or connect a neuron to an effector. So nerve impulses are transmitted across synapse by chemicals known as neurotransmitter. So you have to imagine. So here, stimulus to receptor. Here we have sensory neuron. Moving along the sensory neuron is nerve impulse. Okay, so wait. So wait. We have sensory neuron. So we have nerve impulse here. Nerve impulse move in the form of electricity. This one, electrical. So it will move electricity until the end. Okay, when it reach the end, there is a gap. Okay, there's a gap. Like for example, this is the receptor, right? Receptor. This is the cell body. Okay, it reached the end like this. Okay, then it is connected to relay neuron. Okay, if you look closely here, the nerve fiber doesn't touch the relay neuron. There is a small gap. There is a small gap. Okay, so here, this one is the receptor. Receptor generates nerve impulse. Nerve impulse will move via electricity. Move, electricity up to here. It turns into neurotransmitter, which is this one. It turns into neurotransmitter, which is a form of chemical. It's not electricity anymore. So it will pass through neurotransmitter, which looks like ... like over here. I put ... Okay. Okay. Then it will enter the relay neuron and activate the relay neuron, and then it will move from there onwards as electricity. So nerve impulse again in the relay neuron, which is the central nervous system, in the form of electricity. Okay, so it will move via electricity again, and then up to here, it will reach another synapse again. So it will change to chemical, and then before it change back into electrical, and then pass through the nerve fiber. Okay, so as a conclusion, if you want to pass through the neuron's nerve fiber, you must be in the form of electricity. Okay, but when you want to pass from one neuron to another neuron, okay, you cannot use electricity, you have to use chemical. Okay, so from here onwards, electricity, and then chemical, then electricity, then chemical, then electricity, like this. Okay, so the movement of nerve impulse along the sensory neuron, relay neuron, and motor neuron is not electricity all the way. Okay, it's electricity and then chemical, and then electricity along the relay neuron, and then chemical, and then electricity along the motor neuron. Okay, got it? Very simple. Okay. So we'll be looking at the synapse. Here, this one is basically the end of the nerve fiber. Say this one is the sensory neuron, okay? At the end, the electricity arrive, the electricity transmits and finally reach the end. Okay, when it reach the end over here, what will happen? Okay, the electricity here, as you can see, let's take a look at 1, 2, 3, 4 and follow the diagram. Number 1, synthesis of neurotransmitter and formation of vesicle. So basically, the neurotransmitter is synthesized in the cell body and then get transmitted. Transport of neurotransmitter down the axon. So it will transport all the way to the axon terminal. Axon terminal is the final extreme end of the axon. Okay. So here the vesicle containing the neurotransmitter will reach all the way up to here, and then what happened? Action potential transport travels down the axon. So that means the electricity. Action potential is the electricity. Okay, the electricity will transfer down the axon, and what happened? Action potential or the nervous system. The action potential, or also known as the messages. The nerve message will cause the calcium to enter and evoke the release of neurotransmitter. So it will ask, when nerve impulse reach here, the calcium will diffuse in, and then it will cause the vesicle that contain neurotransmitter to bind with the membrane. And then the neurotransmitter will then be sent out into the synapse. Just in case you do not know what is the synapse is this small gap here. Okay, this small gap is called the synapse. Okay, synapse, or also known as the synaptic cleft, okay, is a region, a small gap between two nerve fiber. Okay, so remember I was saying that nerve impulse will travel via electricity and then suddenly it turns into chemical. Okay, so here it turns into chemical. So electricity come in here, calcium move in, allow the vesicle to diffuse and bind with the membrane of the nerve impulse. This will allow the neurotransmitter to be released. So the neurotransmitter will then diffuse through the synaptic cleft and it reach this neuron. Okay, so it will reach and then it will bind to the receptor found on the next neuron and it will activate it. Okay, so neurotransmitter attached to the receptor, either exciting or inhibiting. Exciting, that means it will stimulate the next neuron to form nerve impulse. Inhibiting, sometimes it will also inhibit. That means it will ask the neurons to not transmit the impulse. That means impulse come from this one, impulse come from here, and then when it reach here, it inhibit, that means it stop. It doesn't proceed. Okay? If it is exciting, then it will come here, and then through here, and then it will continue. This one is exciting. Inhibiting, that means it will stop. Okay? Then we have separation of neurotransmitter molecules from receptor. So it will only activate the receptor for a moment. After that, it will be separated. And then the neurotransmitter will be reuptake to be recycled. So it will be recycled back into the previous neurons. Okay? The vesicle without neurotransmitter will be transported back to the cell body so that new neurotransmitter can be produced in the cell body and it will then get packed back into the vesicle. Okay? Yep. Yeah, that's all for today's lesson. We still have nervous system 2, which we'll look at it at the next video. Okay, today we look at human system 1. Okay, I'll give you more details in human nervous system 2. Okay, that's all for today.